he was a nice guy. And he also had a beautiful girlfriend who was sort of kooky, but lovely woman, just full of energy. Donna. And we became pretty good friends, and what we liked most was going out into the woods and cooking up steaks. When I used to like steaks. We had a great time. We get these, I remember all those, we didn't eat them, but I mean, we caught a lot of frogs. And we looked for chanterelles. Never could find them there. I think it's a myth. But, anyway, I guess there were somewhere we were looking for. We didn't have enough time to really look that well, but we had a good time. I didn't think any terribly big thing, but it turns out, I guess that was probably about 1970. Let's see, what would that be? About 1973. That'd be right.
Yeah, that'd be right.
And now it's 16 years ago, and he's been for almost that time my best friend for all those years. Anyway.
Want to talk about him?
Nope. That's my best friend.
Well, what is it you like about him?
It's not that he was my best friend.
I know. What do you mean?
He wasn't my best friend then. He was just one of the residents who was having a good time. Didn't seem particularly one of the more brilliant fellows. We liked to go out in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
We had a good time together. And most of the time was with Ann.
Mm-hmm.
And what we liked to Ann was to go back north up to Mantel Ridge too. That's where we like to go if we get there. And get as often as I'd like. And get home. It was hard work for me because I took it reasonably seriously, if you could be serious there. I mean, you could really not very serious at all if you wanted to. Got some more water? I can keep talking.
Okay.
It's just I'm getting dry. Talking too much. So, one of the unique opportunities there was, besides the 6 months in the hospitals, I think that's right, you had 6 months where you did electives, and electives could be lots of different things, and you found out who was good, and you developed time to work with somebody, and depending on who you chose and what he wanted you to do and what you were willing to do, you could work a few hours a day, 10 hours a day. You also had to be on call, regardless, for the hospital, because someone had to be there in the hospital to cover the hospital, so there was work too. But the basic rest of the day, you could make it pretty easy. And I certainly can't remember everything I did. I did orthopedics, and for a month. There were two that really were I remember the most. One was neurology. I was sort of interested about going to neurology. And the fellow who ran it was a fellow named Hugh Greer. Now, he may have been one of the most handsomest men I've ever dealt with. He was the head of the Santa Barbara Clinic, and he had been in the Navy in underwater diving. I think he could do almost everything well. He was a good neurologist. I don't know if, I also learned I didn't really like neurology very much. It was real interesting, and he never made anything better. It was almost without a fail. But he enjoyed his job, and he invited a group of his interns, a few of us, which was a large number, but a lot of people wanted to be with him. And they went out to his house. I think it was somewhere out in the best places in Santa Barbara, and the house was more brilliant, sort of, I want to say progresso, but that doesn't sound right. Prov. It doesn't matter. It's a beautiful French sort of house.
Provincial.
Provincial, that's what I want to say. And you went in, and you were met by his wife with a southern accent and a face like an angel. And he took her around the house and showed her her child's ancient antique doll home.
Dollhouse?
Yeah, what am I saying?
Yeah, you're close.
Yeah, anyway, it was a beautiful one. And then he found us to have hors d'oeuvres, guacamole, and she asked for drinks, and he offered whatever he wanted in daiquiris. And to show one of our colleagues, he said, well, did he have pink
Peach.
peach daiquiris? And I just couldn't believe it. Believe it or not, she made it for him. Took a while, but I guess she could make anything. She was the perfect host, and he was certainly the husband, or so it seemed to me. Anyway, and I decided that I would I would spend as much as possible away from neurologists, probably, as best as possible. I have not succeeded, but... And as time went on, I did cardiology, but there was one doctor who sent to me to the model as the ideal doctor in all of Santa Barbara. He had been a graduate of Stanford, and he was an internist, but he could think. So he was sort of the super specialist. I think they call him an internist now because he took the real bad cases. And his name was George Fisher, W.U. Fisher. And he also worked with the residents, so they got to know him. I would argue with things, but I was his only student. And I had all the time I wanted with him, but he could put up with me. And that also wasn't as much as you might seem. He would tell me how many patients he had in, and I'd go see his patients. And then we discussed the case, and he'd have evaluated the patient. And usually these were referred patients, so this really was a secondary service, even though he was an internist. And I didn't do very more than examining with the patient because they really were. This was in a private hospital, not the other two I had mentioned. Believe it or not, this hospital, Goleta Valley, had a major cardiology system run by Vogel, who gave big conferences in Aspen, and his flunkies, and it was a good place to learn. I mean, I got to scrub in for surgery. Of course, the surgeon thought I was a real jerk, but that was fine with me. I was never much of a surgeon. He was probably right, but I got to watch it all and got to learn more stuff that I ever needed to learn about complicated cardiology. But no question at all, the man who great effect on me learning was my last for the last month was a fellow named George Fisher. He was an internist who had been trained at Stanford, and he was sort of a super internist. I'd be probably called a ICU specialist now, but basically what was happening then is when somebody got into the hospital, no one was figuring out anything, he was the guy to figure things out. And as I said, I didn't really manage these cases, but what happened when he got an admission, or more often a referral, I would go to see the patient, and if he agreed, I would examine, take a history and all that good stuff, and then we'd meet and discuss the patient. And I had as much time or as little time as I wanted. I mean, he was going to do everything I did anyway. I was a flunky. And I had known George during the whole program because he had taken a role to help teaching in the resident intern program. And we had, headed about things where I thought he was wrong, and I had this sort of policy, personality thing where I wouldn't say no, and I'd prove to him he was wrong if I could, and be sheepishly when I was wrong, because this guy was a bright guy, and also about a foot taller than me, so he was, he's one of those folks. And anyway, we had a good respect for one another, although I think he really thought I was sort of a jerk. But that doesn't really matter because I didn't, and he was teaching me a lot, and it wasn't working too hard either. You'd make the rounds, you'd have lunch with her, we'd discuss it, and like I said, I wasn't allowed to do very much, and I guess I mentioned I also had to take call at the hospital, do that kind of thing, I guess every 3 nights, or 4 nights, I guess. So you still had, that kind of scut work to do. But this was really pretty easy. You could go home for dinner if you wanted to. Well, anyway, there was one case that really stuck to me when I thought of it. It was a fellow who had been in the hospital several days. I can't remember when, but this fellow came in. No one really had any idea what he had. As I recall, when we first came in to see him, they had an arteriogram of the gut, which somebody thought they saw something, including the radiologist, and George just showed that it was picturing something that really wasn't there. Of course, I would have bought it, that there was something there, a tumor, that was causing this low-grade fever, and he picked it up. I thought I was pretty good in radiology, but this is, special things, and that wasn't his field. He was really good. So I went over him